Today we're creating a Moody Shabby pumpkin plaque that has interchangeable parts that will take us from fall to Halloween in a snap. Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. Hanging with these creative lovelies today, Dawn of Shabby Meets Bling, Kristen of the Fitzsparrow No More, and Annie of Crafting with Indiana Jones for the Shabby Chic Vintage Fall collab. You'll find links to their channels as well as a link to the playlist in the description box. We're joined by some of our favorite creators, so you'll definitely want to check out the playlist. Let's get into it. I designed my pumpkin shape in Photoshop and cut it from 3mm basswood on my laser cutter, and I cut a frame for it as well. So first things first, we're going to paint the frame with Ceramcoat Charcoal. I was inspired by a piece I saw on Pinterest. I'll put a link to that pin in the description box for you in case you're interested in seeing it. As always, I gave my frame 2 coats. I thought a little texture would be nice, so we're going to Mod Podge a crumpled piece of tissue paper to our pumpkin. I'm just going to roll this up in a ball and crinkle it up real good. I'll apply a layer of Mod Podge to my wood surface. I felt like a crinkly surface would add a vintage flavor, so I won't be smoothing this so much as just making sure that the tissue paper is completely in contact with the surface. Now I'm just going to lay the paper right on top here. I chose the standard tan tissue paper because of its neutral color. I felt it would work with both my fall and my Halloween decor. And once I get this fully in contact with the wood, we're going to add a top layer of Mod Podge. Once the Mod Podge has completely dried, we're going to cut away the excess paper, and then we're going to burn away the remaining paper. I have some water handy, as I always do when I do the fire trick. And I'm doing this on top of my crafting pan. Let the flame do its thing. The flame will only burn the paper that hasn't been treated with Mod Podge. And I'm just going to brush away the ashes with a damp paper towel. I've taped my favorite stencil to my work surface, positioned the pumpkin beneath it, and I'm bouncing Ceramcoat Charcoal onto my pumpkin. I'm using a cosmetic sponge to do the bouncing. Let's take a peek. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I will lightly sand the surface to scuff it up a wee bit, age it a touch. Pulling out my floating medium to add some vintage shading. I'm going to use a bigger brush here. I'll prep the brush with the medium, just dipping it in there, and then I'm going to side load with Americana Light Cinnamon. Stroke it on my plate to blend the medium and the paint together. I place the frame back on top of the pumpkin, and I'm going to float around the inside of the frame, laying down my color. This is going to give it that lovely worn effect we all love so much. And I'll reload my brush as needed. Let's move the frame now and darken this just a wee tad. There's no rhyme or reason to this really. I just do it by eye, whatever I like, go with that. I dry brushed the edge of the pumpkin with charcoal to tie it in with the frame and to crunch it up a wee bit. I lightly dry brush over the surface too, to enhance the creases of the tissue paper, to really kind of bring them out and make them pop. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So now let's distress the frame. I'm going to dry brush the frame just here and there with light cinnamon. This is a dark color, so it is very subtle against the charcoal. Probably really difficult to see on camera. See, up here at the top. I love those subtle little touches. I know it can be tough to see on film, but in person, it makes such a huge difference. Now we're going to go in another direction with a much lighter color, Americana Oyster Beige, and I'll dry brush here and there with that as well. Again, no rhyme or reason, just anywhere I think it might look good. Let's take a look at it up against the pumpkin. Put that frame back over it, the pumpkin, so we can get an idea of where we might need some more. Or do we? We do. I dampen my craft toothbrush and dip it into the Oyster Beige to speckle the pumpkin by dragging my thumb across the bristles. Once I get it speckled, I'll tap the speckles with a paper towel to dull them just a wee bit and to kind of almost smear them. We're going to sprinkle again, this time with black, just a few here and there. I feel like this really adds to the vintage vibe as well. So looking at this, I decided to concentrate the Oyster Beige in the center of the pumpkin to give it a more faded appearance. And once we do that, we should be good. As I mentioned, this piece will have interchangeable elements. I cut a leaf for fall and a bat for Halloween. These also were cut from 3mm basswood. I'll base coat the leaf with Art Pueblo, which is a lovely organic terracotta color, and I'll base coat the bat with Ceramcoat Hippo Gray, which is a shade lighter than the charcoal. I'm going to do the bat first, giving it 2 coats. Now for the leaf. You know, it's really weird because on film the Pueblo looks more like burnt orange. It is kind of that color, but it's really more of a clay color. I actually only gave the leaf 1 coat because I could still see the wood grain through it, and I thought that was really pretty. So back to the bat, I'm going to come in and dry brush around the edges of the bat with some straight up black. And we'll do a little alongside his body. Then I come in again with some of the Americana light cinnamon to give it a more rusty look. And a wee touch of Oyster Beige, just a smidge. I will sprinkle my bat with some of the Pueblo, and I'm concentrating the application around the bat's body. This almost looks like a sprinkling of cinnamon. And also, I think it gives kind of a rusty appearance, don't you? And a very light sprinkle of Oyster Beige to tie it all together. I dry brush the edges of our leaf with charcoal. I do come in a little bit where the points are onto the surface of the leaf. I think that adds a more worn look. And we're coming in again with the light cinnamon, kind of giving it that rusty look, and to pull that color in so that it's all cohesive. You feel me? I'm going to go a little over the surface as well, in the middle. Just eyeballing it. a smattering of Oyster Beige speckling, tapping it with my paper towel to dull it a wee bit, and a wee bit of black. Once these are all done, I am going to take them out back and give them a coat of clear matte sailor spray. Right, let's glue on the frame. I'm going to use my Type Bond wood glue here, and I'm going to use clamps until it sets. I have some additional embellishments here, a faux leather leaf from the Dollar Tree, been in my stash forever, wood circle, which we're going to paint, and some Pipberries, and some rusty wire, which we'll make into tendrils. Right, let's start with the wire tendrils. I'm going to cut a couple of lengths of wire, and I'm just going to wrap it around a dowel to curl it. There we go, there's one. Now, you know what, let's make a longer one. Good stuff. I'm going to give my wee circle 2 coats of Oyster Beige, and I'm going to stamp the number 31 in the center of the circle. Let's dry brush the edges with charcoal gray. I want this to look like, one of those enamel tags, have that enamel appearance. I do love those wee vintage enamel tags. Now I'm going to dot on some of the light cinnamon paint and immediately sprinkle it with some actual cinnamon, giving it that rusty texture. For that faux leather leaf that says harvest, I'm just going to dry brush the edges with charcoal. I think that adds a nice vintage touch, and it pulls in aesthetically with the rest of the elements. I'm going to hit the 31 tag with a coat of clear gloss sealer and the leaf with clear matte spray. The gloss sealer will give that tag more of an enamel appearance. For our shabby vintage bow, I've gathered some homespun fabric and some muslin that I have stained with coffee and starched to get extra body and crunchiness. I'll fold each fabric strip, giving it 2 loops, just real simple like this. And I'm going to use this clip here to hold the wee bows I'm making as I create more. I'll stack them alternating the fabric to start and make adjustments as I go, whatever I think looks best. I like the way that looks, so I'll use the remaining strips as tails, and I'm going to zip tie everything together. To hide the zip tie, I'll tie another scrap piece around the center of the bow. I trimmed down the tails to an appropriate size, and I'm going to set that aside for the moment. To attach the interchangeable bat and leaf, I'm going to use this little clip here, and I'm going to use a thumbtack to tack it to the back of the pumpkin. I'm just going to push it in right here, nice and easy. I'll clip the bat in so you can see how this works. See? Look at that. Uh-oh. We'll fix that. I just pushed another thumbtack on the other side of the bat to hold them in place. Worked perfectly. Here it is with the leaf in place. So easy to change it. Now let's grab our Pipberries and the wire tendrils and we're going to staple them into the pumpkin here at the top, just below the stem. Super easy. And while we're at it, I'm also going to staple my bell in place. There we go. Done and done. Now for the final reveal. Let's take a look at our pumpkin first with its Halloween embellishments. I love it. I think it's got a really vintage vibe. I love the 31 tag. Very enamel-y. Don't you think? Let's check out our bat. Now for the fall leaf. Yeah, that's really pretty too. And I like the way the faux leather leaf in the center adds a little rusticness to it. I do love an interchangeable piece. Let me know what you think. Please be sure to check out Dawn, Kristen, and Annie's channels, as well as the playlist. You'll find links in the description box. Please show all of the creators some love. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.